The massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a giant metal city. Ships from dozens of worlds docked at its many ports every day. Traders, tourists, and researchers came from across the galaxy to visit the most famous museum in known space. Kang Daeho pressed his face against the transport window as their small ship approached the station. He had dreamed of this moment for years. As a human scientist who studied ancient alien cultures, he knew this place held secrets that could change everything people knew about the galaxy's past. "Stop looking like a kid at his first space fair," said Lee Minji from the seat beside him. She was his research partner and best friend since their university days on Earth. While Daeho got excited about every old piece of metal they found, Minji stayed calm and took careful notes. "We have work to do." I know, Daeho said, but he could not stop smiling. "But think about it, Minji. The Museum of Ancient Wonders has artifacts from civilizations that died before humans even learned to make fire. Some of those things are older than our entire solar system." Their ship docked with a soft thump. Soon they were walking through the station's busy corridors, following signs toward the museum. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past them. Tall, thin Velkari with their blue skin and extra arms carried glowing data tablets. Short, stocky Thrakari rolled along on mechanical wheels built into their bodies. Flying Zephyrians flapped their feathered wings overhead. Most of the aliens barely looked at the two humans. Earth was still considered a young world by galactic standards. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for about 50 years. Many alien species saw them as primitive newcomers who had gotten lucky with faster-than-light travel. The museum entrance was huge, with walls made of some kind of crystal that showed swirling patterns of light. A holographic sign in dozens of languages welcomed visitors to the greatest collection of ancient mysteries in the galaxy. "Welcome, honored guests," said a mechanical voice as they approached the information desk. Behind it sat an old Thrakari, his metal body decorated with symbols showing his high rank as head curator. "I am Velmoth, guardian of these ancient treasures. How may I assist your research?" "We're here to study the Vanguard suit," Minji said, showing their research permits on her tablet. "We've been given special access to examine it." The old alien's optical sensors dimmed. The cursed armor. Few beings request to see that particular item anymore. Too many have tried and failed to understand its secrets. Some have suffered greatly for their curiosity. He led them through halls filled with amazing artifacts. Daeho saw weapons that could cut through solid rock with beams of light, vehicles that could fly between dimensions, and art made from crystallized time itself. But none of these wonders compared to what waited in the museum's most secure section. The Vanguard suit stood in the center of a circular room behind walls of pure energy. It looked like armor made from living crystal that changed color as they watched. Sometimes it seemed blue like deep water, other times red like fire, and occasionally it flashed with colors that hurt to look at directly. "Beautiful and deadly," Velmoth said with respect in his voice. "For over 3,000 years, warriors and scholars from across the galaxy have tried to wear this armor. 847 attempts. All have failed. Failed how?" Daeho asked, walking closer to the energy barrier. Some were thrown across the room by invisible forces. Others collapsed screaming as their minds were burned by alien thoughts. A few simply turned to dust the moment they touched the crystal surface. The curator's voice grew darker. "The armor seems to hate being touched. It protects itself with deadly force." Minji was already taking readings with her scientific equipment. "The energy output is incredible. It's putting out more power than some small stars, but it's contained somehow within the crystal structure." Daeho studied the ancient writing carved into the floor around the display case. He had spent years learning to read dead languages, and these symbols looked familiar. These warnings, they're in 17 different alien languages, but they all say the same thing. "Only the chosen of the first makers may bear this mantle," Velmoth translated. The first makers were the architects, a civilization that ruled this galaxy long ago. They vanished mysteriously, leaving only ruins and artifacts like this one behind. "What do we know about them?" Minji asked while adjusting her scanners. "Very little. They built amazing technology, but they disappeared completely about 50,000 years ago. Some say they ascended to a higher form of existence. Others believe they were destroyed by an enemy so powerful that even speaking its name brings bad luck." Daeho walked slowly around the energy barrier, studying the armor from every angle. Something about it felt familiar, like a half-remembered dream. As he moved, he noticed something strange on Minji's equipment. "Look at this," he said, pointing to her scanner's display. "The energy readings are changing." Minji frowned at her instruments. "That's impossible. This thing has been putting out the same steady energy pattern for centuries." "But you're right. The readings are definitely fluctuating." "When did the changes start?" Velmoth asked, moving closer with interest. "Just now, when Deho started walking around it," Minji said, checking her equipment again. The energy spikes seemed to follow his movement. The old curator's optical sensors focused on Deho with new interest. "In all my years as guardian of this artifact, nothing like this has ever been recorded. The armor has never reacted to anyone's presence before they actually tried to touch it." Deho felt a strange pulling sensation in his chest, like something calling to him from inside the crystal armor. The feeling grew stronger as he stood directly in front of the display case. The armor's colors seemed to shift more rapidly now, and he could swear he heard a faint humming sound that reminded him of music. "This is fascinating," Minji said, taking more readings. "The armor is definitely responding to you somehow, Deho. But how is that possible?" "I don't know," he replied. But he could not take his eyes off the ancient suit. Something about its design looked right to him, as if he had seen it before in dreams he could not quite remember. "Have any humans ever tried to wear it?" Velmoth checked his historical records. "Actually, no. Humans have only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, and few have shown interest in archaeological artifacts. You would be the first of your species to even examine it closely." The pulling sensation in Deho's chest grew stronger. Every instinct told him that he needed to get closer to the armor, to understand what it was trying to tell him. The crystal surface seemed to pulse with inner light, and those impossible colors danced across its faceted surface like living rainbows. "The energy readings are off the charts now," Minji said with worry in her voice. "Whatever's happening, it's building towards something." Other visitors to the museum had noticed the commotion. Aliens of various species gathered at the room's entrance, pointing and whispering among themselves. Word was spreading quickly through the station's communication networks that something unusual was happening with the cursed armor. "Perhaps we should step back," Velmoth suggested, but his voice carried more curiosity than fear. "This is either a breakthrough in our understanding of architect technology, or we are about to witness another tragedy." But Deho could barely hear them. The humming sound was louder now, and it seemed to be calling his name in a language he had never learned but somehow understood. The armor was no longer just an ancient artifact in a museum display. It was something alive, something that had been waiting for him. The crystal surface pulsed with brilliant light, and for just a moment, Deho thought he saw images flashing within its depths, battles among the stars, great ships flying between worlds, and figures in similar armor standing guard against darkness that threatened to swallow everything. He reached out his hand toward the energy barrier, and the entire room held its breath. The museum's security system chose that exact moment to begin its daily maintenance cycle. For 30 seconds, the energy barriers around the most dangerous artifacts would be offline, while the system reset itself. It happened every day at the same time, and usually no one noticed. But today, Deho noticed. The barrier around the Vanguard suit flickered and disappeared. The armor stood there completely unprotected for the first time in centuries. The humming sound grew so loud that Deho wondered why others could not hear it. Every cell in his body seemed to vibrate with the same frequency. "Deho, don't even think about it," Minji said, reading the look on his face. 847 beings have tried to touch that thing. All of them failed, and most of them died. "The barrier will be back online in 20 seconds, Velmoth warned. "Please step away from the display case," but Deho was not listening anymore. Something deep inside him knew that this moment had been planned by forces beyond his understanding. The armor was not cursed, it was waiting. All those centuries of failed attempts had not been failures at all. They had been tests, and none of the previous candidates had been the right species. He stepped forward and placed his palm against the crystal surface. The universe exploded. Light, brighter than a star's core, erupted from the armor, filling the room with energy that made everyone shield their eyes. The entire space station shuddered as power surged through systems that had never been designed to handle such massive energy flows. Emergency alarms began blaring throughout Nexus Prime. But instead of burning Deho to ash like everyone expected, the armor began to flow. The crystal surface turned liquid, wrapping around his hand like warm honey. He felt no pain, only a sensation of coming home after a long journey he had forgotten taking. The liquid crystal spread up his arm across his chest and down his body. Within seconds, it had formed a perfect suit of armor around him. The surface solidified again, but now it fit his human body as if it had been made specifically for him. That was when the visions began. Daeho's mind filled with images from across space and time. He saw a galaxy much younger than the one he knew, where great cities floated in the void between stars. Ships the size of moons traveled impossible distances in the blink of an eye, and everywhere, beings in crystal armor like his own stood guard against threats from the dark spaces beyond the galaxy's edge. The architects had not been just another alien species. They had been the guardians of all life in the galaxy, protecting billions of worlds from dangers too terrible for most minds to understand. But even they had not been immortal. The visions showed him the architect's final days. Something vast and hungry was coming from the empty space between galaxies. The architects called it the Devourers, and they knew it would consume everything in its path. Stars, planets, entire civilizations. Nothing would survive when it arrived. Desperate, the architects had created a plan that would take thousands of years to complete. They scattered their most advanced technology across the galaxy and hid it where only the right beings could find it. They also did something else, something that made Daeho's human heart race with excitement and terror. They had found a young species on a small blue world in an unremarkable solar system. These beings showed promise, intelligence, creativity, and most importantly, a stubborn refusal to give up when faced with impossible odds. The architects had carefully modified the genetic code of these early humans, hiding dormant abilities that would only activate when the galaxy needed guardians again. Humanity was not a young species that had recently discovered space travel. They were the children of the galaxy's greatest protectors, raised in secret until the time came for them to claim their inheritance. The visions faded, leaving Daeho gasping for air inside the crystal helmet that had formed around his head. He could see everything in the room with perfect clarity, even though the armor's surface was opaque to outside observers. More than that, he could feel the station's computer networks, the energy flowing through its power systems, even the thoughts and emotions of every being nearby. Impossible, Velmoth whispered, his mechanical voice filled with awe. The armor accepted him. A human has awakened the Vanguard suit. Minji stared at her friend, tears streaming down her face. The readings on her equipment were beyond anything she had ever seen. Daeho, are you okay? Can you hear me? I can hear everything, he replied, but his voice now carried harmonics that had not been there before. The armor was translating his words into frequencies that every species in the room could understand perfectly. Minji, we've been lied to, all of us. The entire galaxy has been built on lies about who we really are. The crowd of aliens at the room's entrance had grown larger. Representatives from a dozen species were recording everything with their communication devices. Within minutes, news of what had happened would spread across the galaxy's information networks. What did you see? Velmoth asked, rolling closer on his mechanical wheels. His curiosity overrode any fear he might have felt. The truth about the architects, about humanity, about what's coming. Daeho turned to look at the old curator, and the armor's optical sensors glowed with inner light. The Devourers are returning, Velmoth. The real enemy that destroyed the architects is almost here, and everyone in this galaxy is going to die unless we remember how to fight. He raised his hand and watched as the crystal surface flowed and changed, forming different tools and weapons. The armor was not just protection, it was a complete technological system that could interface with any form of energy or matter. The architects had built it to be the ultimate tool for defending life itself. How long do we have? Minji asked, still taking readings with her equipment. Daeho closed his eyes and reached out with senses he had never known he possessed. Somewhere at the edge of the galaxy, he could feel a wrongness moving through space. It was still far away, but it was definitely coming. I don't know exactly. Years, maybe decades, but not much longer. The station's communication systems crackled to life. All beings in Museum Section 7, please remain calm. Security forces are responding to the energy surge. Do not approach the artifact display area. They're going to want to take the armor away from you, Minji said with worry in her voice. Daeho stood up straighter, feeling strength flowing through him that went beyond anything physical. The armor was connecting him to power sources scattered across the galaxy, ancient systems that were waking up after thousands of years of sleep. They can try. More visions flashed through his mind. Other humans on dozens of worlds were experiencing similar awakenings as architect technology responded to the activation of the Vanguard suit. Hidden installations were coming online. Dormant genetic programs were activating. For the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy's true guardians were remembering their purpose. But there would be resistance. The current leaders of the galactic civilization had built their power on the ruins of the Architect Empire. They would not give up their positions easily, even if it meant leaving the galaxy defenseless against the approaching threat. "What happens now?" Velmoth asked. Deho looked around the room, seeing everything with new understanding. The museum was not just a collection of ancient artifacts. It was a hidden architect facility, designed to awaken humanity when the time was right. Every piece of technology in the building was responding to his presence now, humming with barely contained power. "Now we prepare for war," he said simply. "The real war that should have been fought 50,000 years ago. And this time we're going to win." Outside the museum, the first ships of the Vazari Imperial fleet were already changing course toward Nexus Prime. News of a human activating architect technology had reached the Hegemony Council, and they were not pleased. The ancient armor pulsed with light as it began downloading tactical information directly into Deho's mind. The battle for the galaxy's future was about to begin. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On 1,000 worlds, beings gathered around their communication devices to watch the recordings from Nexus Prime. A human had done the impossible, activated the most legendary artifact in known space. In the Hegemony Council, chambers on the capital world of Centris Prime, Chancellor Krextar of the Vazari Empire slammed his armored fist on the table. The sound echoed through the vast hall where representatives of the galaxy's major species made decisions that affected billions of lives. "This changes everything," he growled in the harsh language of his warrior people. "If humans can use architect technology, then every assumption we have made about galactic power is wrong. Perhaps we should study this development carefully before taking action," suggested Ambassador Thysera of the Peaceful Ethereal Collective. Her species had always preferred diplomacy to warfare. "Study?" Krextar's eyes blazed with anger. "While primitive humans gain access to weapons that could destroy star systems? I think not. My fleet is already moving toward Nexus Prime. The armor will be secured and studied by our top scientists." Meanwhile, on human colonies across the galaxy, strange things were beginning to happen. Park Jiwan was working in the terraforming fields of New Busan when the ground began to shake beneath his feet. He watched in amazement as crystal formations erupted from the soil, growing into complex geometric patterns that pulsed with the same energy signatures that scientists were detecting from the Vanguard suit. "Control Center, are you seeing this?" He called into his communication device. "We're seeing it on 17 different sites across the colony," came the excited reply from Director Kim Hyun-soo. "Whatever's happening on Nexus Prime, it's triggering responses in buried structures we never knew existed." Jiwan approached one of the crystal formations and felt the same pulling sensation that Deho had experienced in the museum. When he placed his hand on the surface, the crystals lit up like stars, and his mind filled with technical knowledge he had never learned. Suddenly he understood how to operate terraforming equipment at levels of efficiency that should have been impossible. On the research station orbiting Kepler 442b, Dr. Yoon Taehyung was studying stellar formations when his instruments detected massive energy spikes coming from the planet's surface. Orbital scans revealed huge structures buried under kilometers of ice, all of them becoming active for the first time in thousands of years. "This is incredible," he told his research team. "These installations are older than any civilization we know about, but their technology is more advanced than anything in our current database." Similar discoveries were happening on dozens of human worlds. Ancient ruins that had been dismissed as natural rock formations were revealing themselves as sophisticated technological complexes. Humans who had lived their entire lives as ordinary farmers, engineers, and teachers were discovering abilities they never knew they possessed. Back on Nexus Prime, Deho was learning to control the incredible power flowing through the Vanguard suit. The armor had integrated with his nervous system so completely that thinking about an action was enough to make it happen. He could interface with any computer system just by looking at it, and his physical strength had increased to levels that seemed impossible. The energy readings are still climbing. Minji reported, her equipment barely able to keep up with the measurements. It's like the armor is drawing power from sources all across the galaxy. It is, Deho confirmed. I can feel them. Hundreds of installations that the architects built as backup power sources. They're all connecting to each other now, creating a network that spans thousands of light years. Velmoth had been studying his historical databases with new interest. If what you experienced in your visions is true, then everything we thought we knew about galactic history is wrong. The current civilization is not the first to achieve interstellar travel. We built our societies on the remains of something much greater. And much more necessary. Deho added grimly. The architects did not disappear because they wanted to ascend to a higher plane of existence. They were preparing for a war they knew they could not win with their current resources. The armor's sensors detected approaching ships long before the station's systems did. We have company coming, he announced. A Vazari battle fleet moving at maximum speed. They'll be here in 6 hours, Chancellor Krekstar, Minji said with disgust. He sees everything as either a threat to destroy or a weapon to claim for himself. What are our options? Velmoth asked. Deho closed his eyes and reached out through the armor's connection to the awakening network. He could sense human colonies across the galaxy, where people were discovering their true heritage. More importantly, he could feel ancient defense systems coming online, weapons and shields that had been hidden for millennia. We could fight them, he said slowly. The armor gives me access to defensive systems that make their weapons look like toys. But that's not the real problem. What do you mean? Minji asked. Look at the bigger picture. The Vazari are just one species and not even the most powerful one in the hegemony. If we start a war now, every alien government in the galaxy will unite against humanity. We'll end up fighting the exact people we need as allies when the Devourers arrive. His communication device chirped with an incoming message. The display showed the face of Captain Oh Hyunwoo, commander of the human exploration vessel Soul's Pride. Deho, thank the stars you're alive, Hyunwoo said with relief in his voice. We've been monitoring the situation from the outer system. My science officer tells me that energy signatures matching the Vanguard suit are appearing on human worlds across the galaxy. How many? Deho asked. At least 40 colonies have reported architect installations becoming active. But there's something else. Something you need to know about what's happening at the galaxy's edge. The captain's expression grew grave. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected gravitational anomalies moving in from intergalactic space. Whatever's out there, it's big enough to affect the orbits of entire star systems. Deho felt a chill that had nothing to do with the armor's climate control. How long until it reaches inhabited systems? Our best estimates say between 5 and 10 years, depending on how fast it's actually moving. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases. The ancient enemy was closer than Deho had thought. In his visions, the Devourers had seemed like a distant threat that future generations would have to face. But if they were already approaching the galaxy's outer rim, then the time for preparation was almost over. Captain, I need you to do something, Deho said urgently. Contact every human colony that's reporting architect activity. Tell them to start learning how to use whatever technology they've found, but to keep quiet about it for now. Why the secrecy? Because the Vazari fleet will be here soon, and they're not coming to negotiate. The alien governments are going to see human access to architect technology as a threat to their power. They'll try to stop us from preparing for the real enemy. Minji looked at her instruments again and frowned. Deho, you might want to see this. The energy network you're connected to. It's not just linking human colonies anymore. I'm detecting responses from non-human worlds too. What kind of responses? Ancient ruins on Thrakari Prime just started broadcasting on frequencies that match the armor's emissions. Same thing on the ethereal homeworld and 3 Zephyrian colonies. It's like the architect network is bigger than we thought. Belmoth's optical sensors brightened with understanding. Of course. The architects would not have trusted the galaxy's defense to just one species. They must have modified others as well, creating multiple lines of guardians. The armor fed Deho more tactical information. The approaching Vazari fleet had enough firepower to destroy the space station, but the awakening defense network could protect it easily. The real question was whether humanity was ready to reveal its true nature to a galaxy that had spent centuries seeing them as primitive newcomers. Contact Ambassador Han Yejin on Earth, he told Captain Hyunwoo. Tell her that first contact protocols just became irrelevant. We're about to find out if the galaxy is ready to accept that the species they considered least important might be the key to everyone's survival. Outside the station, reality rippled as the first architect defense systems came online. Ancient weapons that had slept for 50,000 years began charging their power cores. The time for hiding was over. The Vazari fleet dropped out of hyperspace just as Nexus Prime's sensors detected something else, a massive ship emerging from the deep void at the galaxy's edge. The Devourers had sent their first scout, and it was heading straight for inhabited space. The Vazari war fleet materialized around Nexus Prime like a metal storm cloud. 50 battleships, each one capable of destroying a small moon, formed a perfect sphere around the station, their weapons powered up with the distinctive whine of charging plasma cannons. Chancellor Krextar's face appeared on every communication screen throughout the station. His scarred features and glowing red eyes made him look like something from a nightmare. Attention, inhabitants of Nexus Prime. You are harboring stolen architect technology. Surrender the human and the armor immediately or face the consequences. In the museum, Deho stood perfectly still as data flowed through his connection to the armor. The Vazari fleet was impressive by current galactic standards, but compared to architect defensive systems, it might as well have been throwing rocks at a mountain. He's giving us 30 minutes to comply, Minji said, monitoring the communication channels. After that, they start shooting. Let them, Deho replied calmly. The armor is showing me defensive capabilities that make their weapons look like children's toys. But we need to be smart about this. Velmoth rolled closer on his mechanical wheels. What do you mean? If we just destroy their fleet, every government in the galaxy will see us as the aggressor. We need them to understand what's really happening before we demonstrate our true capabilities. The armor's sensors detected new energy signatures across human space. On New Sol, Kim Soo-young had discovered an underground chamber filled with crystal matrices that responded to her touch. When she activated them, her farming equipment began operating at efficiency levels that defied known physics. Crops that should have taken months to grow were maturing in days. On Terra Nova, Yoon Tae-hyung found that the ice covering his research planet was not natural. It was a protective shell hiding a massive architect facility that had been waiting for the right genetic key. When he entered the complex, his mind filled with knowledge about stellar engineering and energy manipulation. Similar discoveries were happening on every human world, but more surprising were the reports coming from alien colonies. Thrakari engineers found their mechanical bodies interfacing with technology they had never seen before. Ethereal scientists discovered that their natural telepathic abilities could control ancient crystal networks. Even the proud Zephyrians found that their flight capabilities were enhanced by dormant genetic modifications. The architects were thorough. Deho realized as information flooded through the armor's systems. They did not just modify humanity. They planted guardian potential in every species they thought might be capable of defending the galaxy. But why hide it for so long? Minji asked. Because they knew what would happen if everyone discovered their true heritage at the same time. Chaos, war, competition for resources. They needed a trigger, something that would activate all the dormant systems simultaneously when the threat was already approaching. The armor showed him tactical displays of the galaxy's current military forces. Even combined, all the fleets of all the species would not be enough to stop what was coming from beyond the galactic rim. But the awakening architect network was revealing defensive installations and weapon systems scattered throughout known space. 20 minutes until the Vazari deadline. Captain Hyunwoo reported from Seoul's Pride, which was holding position just outside the fleet's formation. Should I contact Earth for backup? No, Deho replied. We need to end this without starting a galactic war. Patch me through to Chancellor Krextar directly. Moments later, the Vazari leader's angry face filled the communication screen. Human, you will surrender the armor and submit to interrogation, or I will reduce that station to scrap metal. Chancellor, Deho said calmly, I understand your concerns about humanity accessing advanced technology. But there are things happening that you need to know about before you make any decisions you might regret. The only thing I need to know is that primitive humans have stolen technology that belongs to the galactic community. Return it now. It was never yours to begin with, Deho replied. And primitive is not the word I would use to describe a species that was genetically modified by the architects to serve as guardians of the galaxy. Krextar's eyes narrowed. Impossible. Humans are a young species that barely achieved spaceflight 50 years ago. That's what we were supposed to believe, but the truth is much more complex. Deho activated the armor's holographic projectors, filling the space around the station with images from his visions. Scenes of ancient Earth appeared, showing early humans working alongside architect engineers to build massive installations that would remain hidden until they were needed. "This is fabrication," the Chancellor snarled. "Propaganda designed to justify your theft." "Then explain why architect installations are activating on human worlds across the galaxy," Deho challenged. "Explain why humans can interface with technology that has rejected every other species for thousands of years." The tactical displays showed that Vazari ships were detecting the same energy, signatures that Nexus Prime sensors had picked up. Ancient defensive systems were coming online throughout the sector, and they were all broadcasting identification codes that matched the Vanguard suit. "Sir?" came a voice from one of Krextar's bridge officers. "We're detecting massive energy buildups on 17 different worlds. The signatures match historical records of architect technology." "Impossible," the Chancellor repeated, but his voice carried less certainty now. "There's something else you need to know," Deho continued. "The reason the architects disappeared was not because they chose to leave. They were preparing for an enemy that's returning now. Our deep space monitors have detected ships approaching from intergalactic space." "What kind of ships?" "The kind that consume entire civilizations. The architects called them devourers, and they're why all this technology was hidden in the first place." "The galaxy needs guardians again, Chancellor. The question is whether you're going to help us prepare or waste time fighting over who gets to control ancient weapons." Krextar was quiet for several moments, clearly receiving reports from his sensor officers. "How long do we have?" 5 to 10 years at most. Maybe less." The communication screen split as other alien leaders joined the conversation. Ambassador Thisara of the Ethereal Collective looked troubled. "We have detected similar energy signatures on our homeworld. Ancient structures that our historians dismissed as natural formations are showing signs of technological activity." "Same here," reported Prime Minister Velthok of the Zephyrian Alliance. "Our people are experiencing what can only be described as genetic awakening. Abilities we never knew we possessed are manifesting across our population." The armor fed Deho tactical information about the approaching Devourer scout ship. It was massive, larger than anything in the current Galactic Fleet databases. Worse, it was not alone. Long-range sensors were detecting more ships following behind it, hidden in the darkness between galaxies. "We can argue about politics later," Deho said urgently. "Right now we need to focus on survival. The architects scattered defensive technology across the galaxy for a reason. Every species that they modified has a role to play in the coming war." "What kind of role?" Krextar asked. "Humans seem to be designed as coordinators. We can interface with and control the architect networks, but other species have different capabilities. Ethereal telepaths can link the defensive systems across interstellar distances. Zephyrian flight abilities let them operate in three-dimensional space battles. Thrakari engineering skills can maintain and repair ancient technology." The holographic displays showed how the galaxy's species could work together, combining their unique abilities to operate weapons and defenses that no single race could handle alone. It was an elegant system, designed by beings who understood that diversity was strength. "And if we refuse to cooperate?" the Chancellor asked. Deho gestured toward the deep space sensor readings showing the approaching alien ships. "Then we all die when the Devourers arrive. They're not coming to conquer or negotiate. They consume everything, planets, stars, entire civilizations. The only reason this galaxy survived their last visit was because the architects fought them to a standstill." "But the architects are gone," Velthok pointed out. "No," Deho said with growing confidence. "They're not gone. They're us, all of us. Every species they modified carries part of their legacy. The technology was just waiting for the right moment to wake up." The sensor displays suddenly blazed with new contacts. The Devourer scout ship had entered the galaxy's outer rim and was moving toward inhabited space at incredible speed. Behind it, the darkness between stars was alive with more ships than anyone had ever imagined possible. "Make your choice," Deho said to the alien leaders. "Unite as guardians or face extinction as separate competing species. The enemy is already here." Chancellor Krextar looked at the sensor readings for a long moment, then at the energy signatures coming from worlds throughout his empire. When he spoke again, His voice carried the weight of command decisions that would affect the entire galaxy. All ships stand down. We have bigger problems than human access to ancient technology. Contact the Hegemony Council. Tell them we need an emergency session immediately. The Vazari fleet powered down their weapons, but everyone knew this was just the beginning. The emergency session of the Hegemony Council was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered in the Great Hall on Centris Prime, their voices creating a chaos of different languages and conflicting opinions. But they all fell silent when the massive viewing screens showed what deep space monitors had detected at the galaxy's edge. The Devourer fleet stretched across space like a dark cancer. Ship after ship emerged from the void between galaxies, each one larger than anything in the current galactic databases. They moved with purpose, consuming small asteroids and space debris as they advanced, growing larger with every meal. The lead scout will reach the outer colonies in 4 years, announced Director Kim Naeon of Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Division. The main fleet will arrive approximately 2 years after that. Ambassador Han Yejin stood at the central podium, her calm voice carrying across the enormous chamber. The time for territorial disputes and political games has ended. What we face is not conquest, it is extinction. These beings do not want our worlds or our resources. They want to consume every form of matter and energy in the galaxy. Chancellor Krextar rose from his seat. The proud Vazari warrior looked older than his years, worn down by the weight of what his censor officers had shown him. My fleets are strong, but they are built for fighting other civilizations like ours. Against enemies that can eat stars, conventional weapons are useless. Which is why the architects left us their tools, Deho said, his voice amplified by the armor's communication systems. He stood beside the Earth ambassador, the Vanguard suit pulsing with energy that every being in the chamber could feel. But only if we use them together. Prime Minister Velthok of the Zephyrian Alliance spoke from his floating platform. Our people have discovered abilities that our scientists say should be impossible. Our pilots can now operate in vacuum without life support, and our reflexes have increased beyond anything we have ever recorded. The Ethereal Collective reports similar phenomena, added Ambassador Thisara. Our telepaths can now communicate across interstellar distances without technological assistance. We are detecting thoughts and emotions from other modified species throughout the galaxy. Velmoth, representing the Thrakari Engineering Guild, rolled forward on his mechanical wheels. Ancient technology on our homeworld has merged with our cybernetic implants. Our people can now interface with systems that use principles our science cannot explain. The viewing screens showed real-time images from dozens of worlds as architect installations revealed themselves. Massive defensive platforms emerged from planetary surfaces where they had been hidden for millennia. Weapon systems that could destroy entire fleets charged their power cores. Most importantly, communication networks that spanned the galaxy began connecting all the modified species into a unified command structure. This is what the architects planned, Daiho explained as the armor fed him tactical information. Not one species acting as guardians, but all of us working together. Each race was modified to fulfill a specific role in the galaxy's defense. And what role do humans play in this grand design? Asked Council Leader Zeph Terran of the Hegemony's ruling committee. Coordination, Daiho replied. The armor allows me to interface with the entire network simultaneously. I can see the status of every defensive installation, every fleet, every individual guardian across the galaxy. More importantly, I can coordinate their actions in real-time combat. The armor's holographic projectors filled the chamber with tactical displays showing how the different species could work together. Ethereal telepaths would provide instant communication between widely separated forces. Zephyrian pilots would operate fighter craft in three-dimensional space battles that would be impossible for ground-based species. Thrakari engineers would maintain and repair ancient technology during combat. Other species would fulfill roles that played to their unique biological advantages. But humans are not the only coordinators, Daiho added. The network is activating similar command suits on other human worlds. My friend Captain Oh Hyunwoo has found one on his ship. Dr. Yoon Tae-hyung discovered another in his research facility. We are not meant to be rulers. We are meant to be conductors of a very large orchestra. Director Kim Naeon stepped forward with new intelligence reports. Our scout ships have made contact with the Devourer Advance Force. They attempted communication but received no response. The enemy ships simply absorbed our vessels and continued advancing. How long do we have to prepare? Chancellor Krextar asked. The network is providing tactical estimates, Deho said, his eyes glowing with data from the armor. If we begin full activation immediately, we can have basic defenses online within 6 months. Complete integration of all Guardian forces will take approximately 3 years. That gives us 1 year to prepare for their arrival, Han Yejin calculated. Can we be ready? Deho closed his eyes and reached out through the armor's connection to awakening Guardians across the galaxy. He could feel their thoughts, their fears, and their growing determination. Humans who had lived ordinary lives as farmers and teachers were learning to operate weapons that could crack planets. Alien civilians were discovering they could survive in the vacuum of space and pilot ships through dimensions that normal physics said did not exist. We can be ready, he said with confidence. But only if we start now and only if we work together. The architects designed this system to require cooperation. No single species can operate the defenses alone. The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives debated with their homeworld governments. Some species were reluctant to trust ancient technology they did not understand. Others worried about surrendering their military independence to a system controlled by humans. It was Velmoth who provided the deciding argument. I have served as guardian of architect artifacts for most of my life, the old Thrakari said. I have seen hundreds of species try and fail to understand their technology. But in the past few days, I have watched ordinary beings from every modified race operate systems that our greatest scientists could not even activate. This is not about human superiority. It is about following a plan that was designed by minds far greater than any of ours. The vote was close, but it passed. The Galactic Defense Protocol was approved by a margin of just 12 votes out of nearly 300 cast. It was enough. Within hours, transport ships were carrying volunteers from every member species to architect installations across the galaxy. The network began connecting them into unified command structures, with humans serving as coordinators and other species filling specialized roles based on their genetic modifications. Deho found himself aboard the massive command ship Eternal Aegis, which had emerged from a hidden facility in the Kepler system. The vessel was larger than most space stations, filled with technology that seamlessly blended the best of architect science with improvements developed by the galaxy's current civilizations. This is incredible, Minji said, studying the ship's systems with scientific wonder. The technology is adapting to us in real time, incorporating improvements based on what we have learned since the architects disappeared. That was always the plan, Deho replied. His consciousness expanded across the galaxy-wide network. They did not want us to simply copy their technology. They wanted us to build on it, to make it better than they ever could. The main viewing screen showed the first Devourer scouts entering the galaxy's outer systems. They were still years away from inhabited worlds, but their presence sent ripples of fear through the network of connected minds. All Guardian forces. This is command, Deho announced, his voice carrying across thousands of light years through ethereal telepathic relays. The enemy is here, but we are not the same galaxy they consumed before. We are united, we are prepared, and we are not going to let them destroy what billions of beings have built. On 1,000 worlds, Guardians took their positions at weapons and defenses that had slept for 50 millennia. In the depths of space, massive battle stations powered up their reality-bending weapons. Throughout the galaxy, ordinary civilians of dozens of species felt the first stirrings of abilities they never knew they possessed. The architects had planned well, but their true masterpiece was not the technology they had left behind. It was the unity they had made possible between species that might otherwise have remained enemies forever. Contact. From the outer monitoring stations reported, Communications Officer Park Ji-hyo from her station on the bridge. The enemy has begun accelerating. They will reach inhabited systems in 2 years, not 4. Deho felt the network respond to this news with determination rather than panic. The Guardians were ready for this fight, even if it came sooner than expected. Then we will be ready in 2 years, he said simply. All stations begin final preparations. The galaxy's long night is ending, and we are going to make sure the dawn is bright enough to drive away any darkness. Outside the ship, space itself began to change as architect technology reshaped reality to humanity's will. The Devourers had consumed countless galaxies, but they had never faced Guardians who refused to surrender, who fought not just for survival, but for the right of all beings to exist in freedom.